So there's a few more things I want to add about this horrific case about the husband who recruited those men to rape his wife, and then who's also had doing stuff to his daughter and possibly even his grandkids, if I've understood that correctly, but I don't know. That has been confirmed. I haven't found that yet in my research. There's just a few things I want to add, and then I'm going to take a break from this because I can't handle it. Yeah, I know. You can't handle it either. It's too much for us right now. I also want to point you in the direction of one journalist that I'm following who is giving updates on this case. This is going to go on for 4 months, and already every moment there's new information that it's like, oh my God. So if you want to keep up with it, good luck. Take care of yourself, but here's someone to follow. There are a lot of French journalists covering this, but I find her account to be really great. And just so you know, under each tweet, you can hit the translate button and it'll translate each tweet. And she's breaking down what's happening, like every day in court. For instance, I just saw this today. 200, at least 200. At least. One of my subscribers said this. I haven't confirmed this, possibly for STIs or STDs, because he insisted that men not wear protection. An inflamed cervix and pain in her abdomen. So one of the things the journalist also said that's happening in court is the challenge, as they were, you know, the police were giving their testimony. One of their challenges was to ensure that there are no other victims, like their wives and relatives of these dudes. Also, apparently this man was so methodical in very organized in his terror. A very methodical file with, for example, a sub-file that said night of November 29th with Quentin. Now, something else that I've been seeing is in this tweet, when she tweeted this yesterday, several of the men who are being, who are on trial already had their own stuff. One of the accused was already detained for marital violence and rape of ex-partners. He was sentenced to 18 years last year. There's this article, I tried to click on it, it's behind a paywall. They are all behind paywall, so it's really hard for me to find information. I already pay for like so many subscriptions to papers in the US, and even some here that I just can't afford to subscribe to all these publications. I would love to, but I'm not doing it for this one story. They say that this all started with the vigilance of a security personnel from the supermarket. Can you imagine if that one security guard had not been vigilant? Like, none of this would have been exposed. Some more details that I had not read about were when the men were invited, they had to come in the middle of the night. It's very strict instructions. I already said the no perfume or cigarettes or whatever, but they had to warm their hands by passing them under hot water, or I also read radiator, to make sure that they didn't wake her up from her coma-like state with like a cold touch or a smell. They had to undress in the kitchen to avoid forgetting items of clothing in the bedroom. Like, this man, you will not convince me he is not a serial unaliver too. He's already been charged with one murder. Like, what else are they going to find out about this man? And he participated in these rapes too. He didn't just watch, he participated. He had them say derogatory terms, degrading terms, but never demanded financial compensation. This part right here, I had not heard of yet. He created his double. The husband allegedly passed this modus operandi, onto a certain Jean-Pierre, whatever, I don't care. Between 2015 and 2020, he regularly went to this man's home to train him. Like, what? He's creating a double, a kind of clone. He had supervised this dude, and the dude accepted that his wife be handed over to Dominique. There's another detail I didn't. So the individuals would enter quietly, whispered, and if the victim moved an arm, they left. See, I told you yesterday that if she moved an arm, they had to leave. But he literally would have them test, whisper, and if she moves her arm, they had to leave. He's described as a patriarch. Well, yes, Y'all see why we don't want patriarchy? This is the mindset it sets up. It's an extreme case, but patriarch with a manipulator, a patriarch manipulator with a perverse personality, using his wife as bait. During the hearings, he explained that he derived pleasure from seeing his wife forced to perform acts she usually refused. He received pleasure watching men do acts to her that he knew she didn't want done. Imagine that being a form of pleasure for you. How depraved do you have to be? I talked about this yesterday. You know, he claims that he was a victim of childhood SA himself. You know, in my video yesterday, I was like, you know, I went into the whole thing about, yeah, okay, this is actually very common. A lot of men who do the most horrific things have a child SA in their past. But someone pointed this out, and I was like, yeah, he also could be completely making this up. Completely making this up. Because the same way that Drake Bell dude only talks about himself as a victim and, you know, skirts around the times that he's been accused of very credible accusations of DV and grooming teenage girls. He's like, yeah, but I'm a victim. That's this kind of thing. I believe that happened to Drake Bell. I absolutely believe it. But you don't get to use that as an excuse to like skirt over you. You know, like a victim can absolutely be a perpetrator. Hello, cycles of violence doesn't mean you will be a perpetrator. But I wouldn't even be surprised if he literally made this part up. Caught up in an addiction. This is not an addiction. You know, as somebody who has suffered from addiction myself and know a lot of recovered addicts, do not do this. Do not do this. Okay, if you're addicted to violence, like, I'm sorry, but you cannot hide behind addiction. That's why all these dudes who get so remember when all those dudes in Hollywood were coming down, they were all like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to like, you know, Schmegs Addicts Anonymous or something to deal with my addiction." Dude, this isn't about addiction. This is about power and violence. So back to the accused. That journalist was reporting on this yesterday. The 23rd accused person admits that he also possessed child porn. The 5th persecuted person, the 5th person on trial, you know, there's like 51 of them. Number 5, also prosecuted for possession of child porn. Number 2, also possessed child porn. And this also, if I'm reading this correctly, this was not reported correctly. It wasn't that 3 men said no. It was that Dominique estimated that about 3 out of 10 men refused. 3 out of 10. So we know that there was 91 men or something that did it. So what? I guess that means 9 times 3, 27? So it's actually, there's more than 3 men, if I'm reading this correctly. And again, this is through the AI translation. That it's not 3 people said no, 3 out of 10. So 1/3, more or less, roughly, of the people who came over were like, no, this was wrong. And we're like, I don't want to be a part of it. The rest of them knew it was wrong and did it anyway. One of the accused expressed regret towards the victim and immediately says that he's as much of a victim as she is because he was trapped by the husband. Oh, really? Because 3 out of 10 said, no, thank you. They didn't feel trapped. They left. They also pointed out in the trial that the victim was not asleep, she was unconscious. And that's a very big thing because the events would not have been able to last as long as they did if she was just asleep. She's not just asleep. She's drunk. One of the guys who's accused says, okay, I came across a man on the website who suggested that I have with his wife whom he had drugged and therefore unconscious and non-consenting. He says it himself, despite the immorality and possible consequences, oddly, I accepted. Direct quote from one of the accused. So it's fascinating that there's 51 dudes and they're all got different stories. Some of them are being more honest and some of them are like, no. It took place at night in the darkness because the woman was shy and self-conscious despite her desires. And she would pretend to be asleep. Okay. Some of them said that this guy was the director, the conductor, and I did what he asked me, but I didn't know why. Y'all, again, remember how me and my mutuals talk about how men are followers, not leaders? Just following orders just following orders to grape his unconscious wife. You knew you couldn't wake up because of all the rules. Investigators undercover, this whole thing was so well thought out that this man knew the exact dosage that he needed to keep his wife unconscious for a few hours. I really hope they make a strong case that this man endangered her life, because this is not just schmegs trafficking and grape. This is endangerment. This is like I would say attempted schmurder, but unsuccessful. Or I don't know, I'm not using the right term. I'm not a lawyer, whatever, I don't care. I have, again, this is the last video I'm gonna make on this for a while, because this is like too upsetting. So another thing that's really disturbing about this is that this is why I feel so bad for the children and the wife. Obviously way worse for the wife, but the children, the adult children, all told investigators that they had no reason to suspect their father had committed such heinous acts against their mother prior to his arrest. The eldest son said nothing in his father's behavior suggested any deviance, and that he had always fulfilled his role as a father. And Caroline, who later found out that this man had pictures of her, said that he was, he was present. He also started this organization called Don't Put Me to Sleep. That's what it's called in English, to raise awareness about how often this happens. And I want to show you something about that. I want to get into something I learned yesterday about statistics about women, but it's going to come up in this article. This is really good reporting here. There's so much information out there, but I learned a lot just in this one article for the New York Times than from a lot of the other articles. I did not know. So for years, she had been losing hair and losing weight, and she started forgetting whole days. Like I talked about the thing where she woke up and couldn't remember having gotten her hair cut. But she losing hair, losing weight. Her children, her friends, she was in like a dream-like trance a lot. Everyone thought she had Alzheimer's. And of course, everything changed when she was summoned to the police station after they arrested him for, looking up on this again. Now, if you're new here, I literally had a man off to me at the river here, and I am telling you, men who do this stuff in public to strangers, they are either about to do that to people they know, their family, their children, or they're already doing it. But you will never convince me that men who are doing stuff like putting phones under women's skirts and to me while I am just minding my business in a public swimming area. This is why I talked about it so much. Something I did not know is that this couple had been together since they were 18. She described her husband to the police as caring and considerate. She didn't recognize any of these men except for one who was a neighbor. The first time she was aware of any of these grapes is literally by it being played for this case. So I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but I learned more about this, and thank you also for people in the comments who are French. That was my understanding, is that consent is not in the law here, and they were working really hard to get consent in the laws around grape. Like literally, there's not in it. It's like the fact that you can take consent away, and that it doesn't have to use violence and these other, and this has been a big issue for a while, but it's still not fixed. So grape is the act of sexual committed by violence, coercion, a threat, or surprise. That leaves no room for marital in terms of being like, nope, never mind, I don't want to. God! A number of feminist lawmakers want to amend the wording to say explicitly that marriage without consent is rape, and that consent can be withdrawn at any time, and that consent cannot exist if the SA is committed by abusing a state of impairing the judgment of another. I mean, apparently that's not clear. I guess surprise doesn't include that. I mean, I don't know. I think I'd be surprised if someone did that to me. Come on. There's a kind of naivety on the topic of predators in France. I don't know if it's it's naivety. I think it's denial. I think it is deep knowing and refusing to look at the truth. And it's not in France. It's literally everywhere. But it's definitely in France. It's not just France. But it's pretty bad here. I mean, they literally will Johnny Depp is still all over. I don't know if it's in the US, but that dude has been on posters all over this country for years. Savage. For whatever perfume or whatever that is. Polanski, I think, has been the France is known for harboring and a lot of it is because of the laws are just so doesn't take this seriously. I have my own gripes with the U.S. and the laws over there but I'm just saying some of them are a little behind here. Although my understanding is that it is illegal to send an unsolicited pic. Eggplant pic. That isn't the case in the U.S. as far as I know. I don't know. Whatever. It's also like state by state. Look at this. So this was said by Sandrine Josso, a lawmaker who led a parliamentary commission into what is known as France's chemical submission. Basically wronging someone with malicious intent. She started the commission after she said she became the victim of wronging herself last year. Look at this! A senator is being investigated on accusations that he slipped into her, like a coworker, a senator, one of her colleagues. She hopes that this trial will draw attention to the use of neurons to prey on women and also shed light, look at this, on wide profile of predators. They could be your neighbors without falling into paranoia. Like, she's not like, don't assume all your neighbors are doing this, but like, we need to like really think about this, that like the pillars of the community are oftentimes the villains of their home. This dude seemed like a classic man next door. He was a trained electrician, entrepreneur, and an avid cyclist. His middle child and only daughter, Caroline, had described him as a warm and present father in her book. He's the one who drove her to school, picked her up late from parties, encouraged her, and consoled her. This is like the really disturbing part, honestly. Her mother was the stable breadwinner working as a manager in the Paris area company for 20 years. So he was, it seems like he was more like, I don't know if this is what she's saying, but the default parent possibly, very present. He's the one doing more of the stuff. So the couple, when they retired, they moved to a house with a big garden and a pool. In a small town, they regularly hosted their 3 children and grandchildren for summer vacation. They had late dinners, family debated, that's such a French thing, debating, held dance competitions, played Trivial Pursuit, just like any family. This is why, y'all, this poor family, oh my God, I don't know. You will, imagine thinking your dad was like an amazing dad, and then you find out he has photos of you without clothes on and did this to your mom and is like and murdered somebody too. Throw that in there. Can you imagine your world, your reality? Everything would be upside down from there on. How can you trust anybody when the most important man in your life, from childhood to whenever, does evil stuff? And you thought, look, as somebody who is a survivor, I understand what it's like to have like the monster in your home and you love him, in your family and you love him. It is a double life, and on some level, lots of people know what it's like to love someone who does terrible things, but to find out he was doing terrible things at this age. I think of us as happy, his daughter wrote. I thought my parents were. None of them harbored any suspicion. Then in 2020, 3 women reported him to the police. I'm kind of confused by this because it sounds like the security guard was a big part of this. But the fact that, I don't know. But these 3 women and a security guard, without them, none of this would have been exposed. None of these men would have been exposed. And again, several of the men are already PDFers. He's accused of also violating the privacy of his wife, daughter, and 2 daughter-in-laws. Apparently, he was recording the daughter-in-law, his son's wives, I guess, illegally recording them and distributing them. Every woman in that family was harmed by this man. Okay, so again, I'm learning a little bit more. So not only he did this so he could do things to her, but to dress her in things. God, what was he putting on her? Originally, and this is why this stuff escalates. It escalates. First, he's like, oh, I'll just, put tranquilizers in her dinner at night so I can do things to her. And then it's not enough. Then it's like, now he needs to dress her and things. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to start having other men join me. Again, no, I think I would feel better about this if this had to do with money. Because then I'd be like, I don't know, you're greedy. It wouldn't excuse it. But the fact that he literally got pleasure from this. This was about, he got off on torturing somebody. This man is a psychopath. So again, this unmoderated French website implicated it in more than 23,000 police cases in 3 years. 23,000 police cases. I don't understand how these websites exist. I know there's the dark web, but I don't even know how people get on it. God, I thought it was shut down, and the owner of it was arrested. This particular chat room was, without their knowledge. Basically just a chat room for a bunch of rapists. Just hang out. So another detail, all the stuff I've already mentioned, after they left, he would clean her body. Again, y'all, this is serial unaliver level of premeditation. Oh my God. And then would take her to the doctor. I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know why your hair's falling out. Try to convince her it's because she's a grandma and is a little tired from that. So this mentions the other case. Only one of the men is not charged with assault attempted of his wife. Instead, that man is accused of following the same. That's the man I was just talking about. His double, his mini-me, his training to do the same thing. He's also being charged with raping that man's wife and drug. So a total so far of 5 of the men are charged with possessing child porn. I'm surprised it's not more yet. This other point, the story has prompted some soul searching among doctors since she had visited gynecologists and neurologists over a series of mystifying symptoms. Never received a diagnosis. I'm surprised they weren't oh, it's just menopause or something else. Oh, it's just a lady thing. Although they wouldn't say menopause because they don't even tell us about that. What I found disturbing for us doctors was that no doctor considered the hypothesis. This is coming from a well-known obstetrician and gyno, an expert in violence against women. She and a pharmacist have now developed training for doctors and nurses on the symptoms that victims of assault can experience. So this is her. Thank you. Y'all, this is a horrifying case, but I do believe some progressive things are going to come from it, like this kind of education. Because the thing is this is so horrifying to look at, but it's happening to other women and they don't even know it. And I hate that this poor woman is the catalyst for change. But, sometimes things have to just be a case has to be so awful that it forces the public to wake up and admit this is a problem. Contrary to popular belief, most cases occur at home. I'm going to read that again. Contrary to popular belief, most of these roofie type cases happen at home. Have you heard that before? I haven't. I believe that most violence against women is at home. That's why I tell you. You will never tell me just stay home. Don't go to the beach. Don't, whatever. They're everywhere. You will never convince me that the boogeyman hiding in the bushes is ever more dangerous and scary than the men in our homes, whether it's our dad, our husband, our boyfriend, our brothers, our grandpas, uncles, stepfathers. But I did not know that even in wronging cases that it is most common in the home, not at bars, not by strangers, by the very men that you dedicated your life to sharing, that you gave children to, that you have like done so much. I find this to be, it lines up with everything I say, but I just didn't know this. They're all telling you to cover your drink at the bar. Still do that. But it's, and that also goes, that, you know, I've talked about how like statistically, what I forget the exact, it was like 75 or 80 something % of women with what's it called? HIV, of straight women with HIV get it from their husbands. That STIs, your risk of STI is just as great when you're married in a monogamous relationship as if you're single. So this lines up, but I had not heard it stated so simply before. Most victims are women, the survey so, and about half of the victims do not remember the attack. I know this is in France, but I would not be surprised if it's the same in the U.S. In the case, some of the accused admitted guilt to the police. Many claimed that they were tricked into doing this, into raping, not she was just pretending to be shy, but several said they believed that she had consented to being wronged and raped as part of the fantasy, and some said that they did not believe it was rape because her husband was there and they believed he could consent for both of them. He can't consent for both of them. Like, I don't think they're just saying this. I think they believe this. He can consent for both of them. This is 2024, and we got men who believe that a husband has that power, or a partner, that a man can consent for a woman. It sends shivers down the spine regarding the state of affairs in French society. If that's this conception of consent in matters in 2024, then we have a lot of work to do. Exactly. Men in court are saying that out loud. He could consent for her. We have so much work to do, y'all. And that's not just in France. I would be willing to bet there are just as many men in the U.S. who would say the exact same thing. Anyway, I will not be reporting anything else on this case for the foreseeable future because I can't handle it, especially because it's so close to what happened last week and the violence of that, and my body is not doing okay. And I don't know, I shouldn't have even started looking into it. Once I started, I kind of couldn't stop. I'm going to really, anyway, I am sorry this was a really hard one. I hope you take care of yourself. And if you need to take a break yourself from following this case, please do it. Don't let your curiosity and you feel like you need to know what's happening. You can find out later. This is going to be going on for 4 months. Check back in 4 months and read the summary. Don't do this. I really caution you from following this daily because it's so upsetting, y'all. It's so upsetting. Every time I read it, I literally have a pain right here. Like I can barely breathe when I read it. So I am taking a break from it. I hope you do too, if that's what you need. And thank you for listening. And go take a warm bath or something. I don't know, whatever. But thank you for all of the people who made this case happen. It's a terrifying case, but it actually gives me a lot of hope. Because we can't change anything if people won't admit there's a problem. This case is forcing us, not just, us, I say the collective, because a lot of us have been screaming this for a long time. It is forcing us to look at it. And I can't believe that she did this, made it public. Protect her. Anyway, thanks for listening.